Everybody ready to get started? I'm Tina Whitlock,
Sorry.
and I'm going to be your presenter tonight. I'm currently a coach with the British women's national team, and I do not reside in the UK. I actually reside here in the US, down in South Carolina. I am the only true American on the team. I think we have one true Aussie as well, but all of our girls are dual citizens. So we have girls who are British Canadian, British American, British South African, British Australian. So we have young ladies that played the game of softball all over the world, and many of them actually come to the US to train and compete at the collegiate level. And actually there's a young girl that's attending sophomore college right now, and I've been on both coasts within the last 6 days, and her name has come up twice now. So, oh, do you know Laura? And so we are pretty much plugged in here. And I want to get started with the topic of tonight, which is mastering the mental mountain, learning to get lost in the game. As we know, with mental mountains and the mental side of the game, it's very challenging because you've got to teach the athletes how to either climb that mountain, go around that mountain, dig your way through it, maybe even tunnel under it, or maybe just blow that sucker up, right? Because what we know about mountains is usually they're molehills, and somebody has taken them, our athletes have taken them and made them bigger than what they are. But it can be very debilitating. So I want to first start with the number one thing that I think is the most powerful mental tool you as a coach can use. It's not just about what your athletes can use, but you as a coach can use. And that is the power of belief. I'm going to start by just sharing with you the most powerful moment that I have had with the power of belief. And it came from my coach in college. Joyce Compton was this South Carolina head coach for many, many years. She is a Hall of Fame coach. And she recruited me out of Southern California. I was hitting at the national tournament in Chattanooga. I wasn't even playing defense. I was just hitting. And at that time, I was 5'2", 119 pounds, and I was somehow a power hitter. Don't ask me how. I believed I was the little dog that played like a big dog. And I contribute that to my father because he taught me that I can do anything. He never made size an issue. I was a catcher as well. I caught in the ESCC. I caught all the way to the US and pro level. So Stacy Nuveman, if any of you are familiar with her, she's one of our first Olympians. She is probably 6'2", and certainly much broader than I am and towers over me, but her and I were teammates and comrades, completely different body sizes, but we approached the game with the same kind of competitive heart. So Joyce Compton took a risk on a little girl out of San Diego to come in and play at the highest of levels. In my senior year, when we concluded our season, we were 63-5, and that was we were 63-3 going into the World Series. We had just competed and won the first ever SEC conference, and we won the regional. We had set an NCAA winning streak. Our pitcher was the Hunter Broadwick Award winner of the year that year, and we played at the biggest stage of women's softball. It was an amazing year. It was a dream season. But going in there, I can remember back to some of my first competitions with my coach. And she wasn't much of a talker. She wasn't much of an instructor either. She would just set up the drill or set up the skill that we needed to execute, and she'd expect us to do it. She was one of those that could give you confidence just by a look. So my first memory of her was standing at third base and giving me the sign and then the look. Get the job done. I have confidence in you to get it done. And she'd given me a hit and run with a runner on third. And I think it was a tie ball game or we were down. I can't remember those details, but I remember I said in the moment, really? Okay, let's do this. And it went over the fence. And I didn't question what she had me do. I just loved the fact that she believed that I could do whatever she asked me in the moment. So it was the power of her belief. And so numerous incidents occurred throughout my 4 years at South Carolina where my coach, all she did was communicate a sign and a look, and we got the job done. And every year that I was there, we were in the postseason every game I played in my collegiate, during my collegiate career. But that was not the most impactful time that my coach shared how much she believed in me just by a look or an instruction. If we fast forward, we had this wonderful season. I went on to play pro ball. I went on to play with the Team USA and train with them for 3 years. Went to the Pan Am qualifiers down in Medellin, Colombia. A dream life. And then the day came to hang up my cleats and start a family. And for those of you who have done that, whether you do it by choice or whether you do it because you're forced to an injury or whatever it might be, the circumstances, it's not an easy transition. But I was very excited to put into practice my master's degree in teaching and start my family, so I did. I had a little 2-year-old boy by the name of Aaron. I married my college sweetheart. He was 8 years older than me, and he loved following me around, watching us beat the Gators and take care of Alabama and even Auburn at that time. It was a wonderful time in my life, and I was for the first time transitioning from the ball field to life. And what we know about life and what we know about the game is it's good and then it's unkind. And in this time in my life, I had my first child. I was a stay-at-home mom making a life for myself, and then reality hit. Life took a turn. I was pregnant with my second child, and I remembered I had a toddler who was 2.5 years old, and I was 9 days away from giving birth to my second child. I got a phone call one morning. It was the most devastating news I've ever received. Tragically, my husband had passed away at work. They didn't know why. I had no why. There had really not been any signs in that moment. But in that moment, my life was challenged. Everything that I'd worked toward, transitioned, all the stuff that you built for, because it's the next step, was gone. I now was a mother of 2, or soon to be 2, and I now had to put into practice what skills I had learned on the ball field. Ooh, I have no idea what I did there. I'll let one of the tech people take care of that. The skills that I learned on the ball field, my faith, and the mental fortitude that I had, the little bit that I felt like I had, into practice. So within that 9 days, I had to bury my husband and give birth to my second child. Not a situation none of us planned for. But I will tell you this, one of the first people that I saw when I walked out of that funeral home or out of the church was my coach. And I paused, and in that moment, she gave me the same look that she would give me if she was at third base. This is what you're going to do, and I believe you can do it. And then I hugged her neck, and it was a wonderful embrace. And the most amazing thing about it was she was consistent in the moment. So whether it was a pressure situation, whether it was a devastating thing, or whether it was victory, my coach was consistent in the moment. And that was the most powerful form of belief that I had ever experienced, because it had come from the ball field, but it went to real life. And that there is what I'm encouraging you coaches, and I'm challenging you to do, is to connect with your players in a way that when they hang up their cleats on the ball field, that everything that they learned from you and other experiences that they've had under you, that they can carry with them to real life. Because when it gets unkind, when life gets unkind, they need that kind of strength. They need that belief. They need that belief. So what I want to share with you today are just a few things that have come from other coaches that I've had the experience to have tutelage under, because those are the things that honestly will be the most impactful. So when I speak of belief, when I got onto the ball field, I went back into coaching when my children got out of diapers, because that's my calling. The Lord said, I've gifted you, and you need to go back into the field, and you need to coach. You need to take the lessons that you've learned and experiences, and you need to take it to the ball field. And one of the things that I've learned is this. A lot of our athletes don't believe in themselves because they've never been taught how. And I remember saying when I first got back in, well, it's hard for me to believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. Well, I'm the coach. So I had to change my thinking, because that got me nowhere with players. If anything, they stayed right where they were. They didn't believe in themselves anymore. Maybe a few of them were challenged to say, I'm going to prove you wrong, coach. But really, that's not what happened. But what I realized is when I changed my perspective and my approach as a coach to where I'm going to believe in you when you don't, because that's really what they need, is they need coaches to believe in them and teach them how to believe in themselves when they don't. That's what we're here to do. Those are the techniques what we're supposed to teach. The belief in yourself when you can't or you don't know how. That's the most important thing. So one of the other techniques that I learned in some of my private lessons, I titled it Finding Goldilocks. So when I work with an athlete, we kind of touch on both extremes. And I take those moments to point it out, because just like Goldilocks, when she went in and she tested the hot porridge and she tested the cold porridge until she found just right. And each athlete is going to be different. And sometimes it's as simple as just telling them the story of Goldilocks, right? And they go, aha, and they have that aha moment. And then the other times it's about, okay, we're going to go test the porridge. We're going to feel it. This is what it's going to be like when things are really hot. You point it out to them. You're on that hitting streak, this is what it's like. You're in that slump, this is what it's like. This is what it's like to be at the bottom end. You're striking out 4 times in a row, this is what it's like. And then walk them through that to where they find their Goldilocks, the just right. And I tell them the story. I said, you know, in my career, I had my best and worst days all in the same day. We were down in Columbus, Georgia. I forget who exactly we were playing, but I knew that we were playing Oklahoma or Oklahoma State the next game, and they had an amazing pitcher. But that first game, I hit for the cycle in natural order, so I come off all elated. It's great. And then we transitioned into the next game, and I struck out 4 times with a ball over my head. And obviously that didn't feel good. So when I share that story, I say, well, I have a choice in those moments. We're going to find Goldilocks. Which one do I walk away with? I walk away with the good. I phoned home. Back then I didn't have cell phones, so I had to wait until we got to the hotel room to call collect and call home. But I got to tell my dad that, hey, you know, I hit for the cycle, it's great, and oh yeah, I struck out 4 times, but you know what, there's a club for that. Baseball players are great with that, because there's a club for everything in baseball. You struck out 3 times, yeah, it's just a silver sombrero. You strike out 4, here's a golden one. So I remind my athletes that no matter how bad it gets, when you're tasting that cold porridge, there's a club for that. And just like when Babe Ruth, you know, setting the home run record, he also set the strikeout record, correct? Got to get my facts straight on that. But so I want to always make sure that my athletes understand the story of Goldilocks. And maybe there's a different nursery rhyme that you want to learn, but sometimes, or different nursery rhyme that you want to share with them. Sometimes it's just simple as telling them the story. Whether it's a nursery story, or maybe it's your own personal story. Being able to relate to your athletes by sharing situations that you were in as a player shows your vulnerability, and also just the fact that you weren't just the coach that went and played and had no problems when you played. I found that brings about the connection between the coach and the player. And when you can make that connection, finding that just right is a lot easier. Attention turn, that's the next, attention turn is the next technique that I used. And this one I developed on my own, and I just started doing it during a game. I had experienced a slump, and it was very easy to come in off the field and after striking out or grounding out and feel, oh man, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? And just continue to think through what I needed to do. And what I found was when I started to put my attention on my teammates, I no longer thought about myself. So I had this routine that whether I was successful or whether I was, or if I had failed, that in that moment, my routine, I think nowadays they call it failure recovery, and it has a couple different avenues. But for me in that moment, I did a couple things. I looked at my teammate who was on deck or who was ever next, or maybe it was on the field. I looked them in the eye, and I said their name, their number, or their nickname. And I said their name or their number because then it personalized and made it genuine what my efforts were doing, and I was trying to put on them the next encouragement. So if it was Sue up the bat, I was like, hey Sue, I either communicate the game to her or communicate through cheer, because softball players like to cheer something there. But it took my attention off myself, and so that was a technique that I found very helpful, and it allowed for me then to transition into the defensive part of the game without that previous at-bat or that previous failure to continue to haunt or transition into that next at-bat. So that one was just attention turned, and again, like I said, some team, I think Sue was called it failure recovery, but I highly recommend making sure that your players verbalize a teammate's name. Again, it takes it off the individual and puts it back onto the team. And we know anytime we have energy that's going towards another player that's good, it can be contagious, right? And in any moment, that could be the momentum changer, right? That game-changing moment. And that's what you want to foster, is that ability to take a negative and turn it into a positive. And I found that kind of routine actually was very, very helpful. And it led to a lot of good things for me as a hitter. So personally, I benefited as well, even though I was trying to benefit my teammate in that moment. And then I used the power of suggestion. And the power of suggestion comes from one of my former coaches by the name of Phil Bruder. He coached out in California for a team called the California Raiders. And they are still around, and he still coaches, but they're not. Back in the glory days, he had like 12 national championships, and Phil was a character, and he, in many ways, was intimidating to a lot of the opposing teams and opposing coaches because he was just very loud and beyond honest. Let's just say that when he would communicate. But one of the things that I liked most about Phil was just he was also a master motivator. And let's say just an example of using the power of suggestion. And he did this in many different ways. He would, let's say you had that streamer that went foul. You got a hold of it, but it just barely went foul. But you ripped it. You felt good, looked good, but it was just a long strike. Instead of it looking at it like a long strike, he would actually turn that around and he'd be yelling out to the other team, hey, come Nationals, that's going to be a fair ball. Come Nationals, that's a fair ball, because number one, he put in there, we're going to be at Nationals. And number two, you better watch out, because that there is going to be a fair ball. No longer is it going, we're going to correct everything that we're doing wrong, and we're going to right it. And it was amazing how just him suggesting that's how it's going to be, it happened. He did that all the time. And so when I work with my hitters, especially in the cage, have you ever worked with that hitter and they'll get going, and then all of a sudden they'll hit a few, they'll have a couple mishits, and then all of a sudden they react to the mishit. So when I'm working with the hitters and they have a mishit, let's say it's just a nice slow ground ball to the second base side, to the right side. I'll tell them, I said, hey, we're going to pull the good out of everything. When can that apply to the game where it can be beneficial? You got a runner on third, you've got speed, that can be the game-winning run right here. So every single thing, even if it's a foul ball, I remind them, hey, you're in the count, you're battling right here. So I'm suggesting to them that everything that they are training is going to be helpful one day in their game. Even the things that seem in the moment not to be useful or beneficial. That pop up to the outfield, hey, we got speed on third, she scored, or we got speed on second, she's advancing bases. So I'm painting that picture through the power of suggestion of how they can utilize what might be perceived as a mistake or a mishit into something that could actually be quite good for the team. I cannot tell you how much film that I watched of SEC film where it was just a little ground ball bloop. Runner scores. Ball game, they win. And it wasn't anything grand. I think a lot of times our athletes are looking for that solid line drive or that hit in the gap. And it's not always like that. Yes, we love it when the stars line up like that, but there are a lot of things that are on a more simple level that can be effective. And we just have to, through the power of suggestion and through just educating them what they can, the vision of what can work for them, you'll see that they'll start to be able to use that. So when they're in a situation, they can see it happen. So Phil was great at that. I call it also choreographing. I coach a 14U baseball team right now, and they're great. They're a lot of fun. I wasn't sure how my skills would transition, but the guys are great. And we were in a game the other day, and it was the championship game of this tournament. And the hitter up the bat was the coach's son, the opposing coach's son. And he didn't want to walk. And my pitcher was struggling to throw with it to him because he was a very, very good hitter. And he got to 3 balls, and he threw the 4th ball. But the kid didn't want to walk, so there was a runner on first. Let me paint this. There was a runner on first. We had 1 out. And the kid up the bat did not want to walk, so he kind of took a half swing, like just very lazily kind of swung at the ball. And the umpire didn't see it cross the plate, so he was going to give him first base. I wasn't going to have that, so I called timeout. He goes, okay, yes, he did swing. We got the call, brought him back. And we were going to make this kid earn it. So we call timeout, we go out to the mound, and we have Patrick, who's our second baseman. He's not even involved in this meeting because Patrick's tying his shoe. He's in a whole nother world, Patrick is. And we're all together like, this is what we're going to do, fellas. And I'm painting the vision of what we're going to do. I'm choreographing the moment. Thatcher, who's our pitcher, Thatcher, you're going to just throw it to the outside part of the plate. We're going to get a slow ground ball to second base. Patrick, you over there, Patrick, you're going to throw it to second base, and we're going to double this up when we get out of this inning. Guess what? They did it. They executed it, and it was just that matter of the moment saying, this is what we're going to do. We facilitated, through the power of suggestion, we made it known how we were going to do this. But too often, in the matter of moments, we put pressure on our athletes, right? And they can't perform because we've just made a difficult situation or a pressure situation that much more. We've made the mountain out of a molehill. So as coaches, I want to take the approach that we are also facilitators, and if you define the word facilitate, it simply means to make easy. Because that's our job. We believe in them, and then we make their job easy so they can be successful out there. Those kids came running off that ball field. I mean, it was only like the fourth inning, but we won it in the fourth inning because that there was the momentum changer. They couldn't believe that we could say, this is what we want to do, and do it. And we can do that same with softball. Facilitate, paint the vision. Through the power of suggestion, empower your athletes to do this. Another technique that I use is parenting. And parenting I usually use with my hitters. We can do it with pitchers, but most often I'm doing it with my hitters. And it's a form of verbal cueing. And we get into a situational hitting, and we start runner on one. I say runner on one, bunter over. And it's just a repeat. The athlete says runner on one, bunter over, and then we execute. It sounds very slow, but it gets going very fast, and the girls will be able to operate and execute under pressure a lot better once we go through it in slow motion. Second thing we say is runner on two, hit behind the runner. Now during this time, I might be keeping the ball, locating it on the outside just to make that a little easier, but as they get acclimated to the drill, then I'll bring it inside, so they have to really create an inside-out hit. But mentally, they know what they're to do. Runner on two. Have you ever had an athlete and you've got a runner on two and you want to hit to the right side and they're still pulling it because they don't think they can hit it to the right side? Well, a lot of times it's because they don't either recognize the situation or they're caught up in the pressure of the situation where they're paralyzed. They don't know how to do it in that moment. So we go runner on one, move her over. We can say move her over, bunch her over, whatever you want to execute. Runner on two, hit behind the runner. And again, they're repeating this before we pitch. Runner on three, find the green. We can do bases loaded, win the ball game. Whatever situations you want to come up with, I keep mine pretty simple. And then we do repeat. We rep it out. We repeat that. And it sounds very simple, but I have found some really good success. Just this year alone, I put two girls committed to Clemson, one to Ole Miss, one to Arkansas, Pitt, and Western Carolina, along with Appalachian State. I usually only take about 8 to 10 girls at a time, and I do a boutique style of conditioning and training and development, so that way then I can help them achieve the highest levels. I got a girl right now that's actually looking to transfer. She went from like a NIA right now, and she's only been playing the game for 2 years. And through just her simple training, we found that she actually has the skill to play probably in a small D1 or maybe a big D1 as a role, like a bullpen catcher, DH, pinch runner. But finding that little niche for her is what we're working on, and she has the mental capacity to do it as well as the skills. It's a pretty amazing story. I'm looking forward to her unfolding. And she's really bought into the parenting and that part. When they go to the game, come game time, they recognize the situations. And it's very simple. They're just reacting. The emotion that they have to play is no longer debilitating them. It's in the back pocket and it's fueling them instead of being something that seems like a mountain to them. And that's one of the things that's one of the other coaching changes that I made. When I was younger, I would say, oh, you got to play this game without emotion. And I got to thinking, well, I'm pretty passionate when I'm out on the field. And how did I do that? I played with passion, I played with emotion, I just had it in my back pocket. So it fueled me rather than debilitated me in the moment. So remind your players that it's great to play with that, but you just have to make sure that it's put in the right place. Zone yoga. Now this one I came about just a couple years ago. And again, this is a technique. This one might be a little out of the box for some of you. How many of you have taken yoga? Yeah, so this one might be a little bit different. But let me ask you this. How many of you have been in that moment where you're up that, or maybe you're on the mound, whatever it might be, it's your moment. You don't hear anything, everything's off in the distance. You're zoned in, right? You're feeling good. Everything, the stars have lined up and you are in that moment. You know the feeling I'm talking about. And it's hard to get those moments to duplicate themselves because it's hard sometimes to hold on to those moments, especially when you're younger, because most of us have learned how to find that and hold on to it, that mental state where you're just balanced. Like we talk about hitters being quiet, right? No wheels going on up here, no jitters. We've just, through trial and error, found out how to do that. We've never really been taught how. Well, a few years ago when I hurt my knee, I got into doing some of the hot yoga stuff. And there were 3 poses in that class that, like, everything just went quiet when the equilibrium just kind of destabilized. And when it hit me, I was like, wow, this is just like being up to bat, and everything just went silent, and I'm in the zone, and I'm ready just to drive this ball. And it was an epiphany, like, oh, I can use this with my athletes. And my British girls use it, my baseball dudes use it, and they have found great success in training that zone, getting quiet in the box. And again, this is another one that I've used for hitting, and it's 3 poses. The first one is a one-leg stance. The second one is, they call it table, and then the third one is called standing bow. And I can show you these on the internet and get those pictures for you. I should have put them on here. I will do them, but we'll wait for afterwards, because we'll do them afterwards. That way, then when I'm not here up on the stage. But I've been driving a long time, so my knee is not in good shape to do all these poses. They're very simple, but the one, I'll do the first one. What I find most often, the reason why a lot of hitters struggle mentally is because balance is an issue. Okay, so anytime you're off balance, and a shift in balance can be very subtle, but your brain and your body just kind of makes up for it, and we're not always aware when we're off balance because our brain's constantly shifting things, right? It's doing it for us. But anytime we shift and we're out of balance, it takes away from our power, and it takes away from our technique, and it takes away from our timing. And so mentally, that can really take away from an athlete, because you cannot be focused if your body is subconsciously working on its balance. And so the first pose, I have them do it on both legs. And so the first one's going to go, they go simple arm up, and I have them do it in order, okay? And then they get their leg. Yeah, if I told you I had been driving in the car. And the eyes are out, and it's going to be a wide, soft focus. And there, you can see when they get still, I'm a little wobbly right now. But when they get still, you can see there at that one moment, it lined up. And it does take practice. And I usually ask my athletes to hold from one side or the other, and you'll see just a little bit of the wobble, but then when they get it, everything goes into focus. And the sound, usually where I work, it's a gym, it's almost like a nightclub where we're at, the music's going so loud, but the music goes off in the distance, and usually you'll see a little bit of elation across their face because they felt it. And when we talk with hitters, we always talk about feel, right? How does that feel? And when they feel it, they feel that balance and everything come together, they know, yes, they recognize it, and then you have them practice that, and they learn how to turn it on and off to where when they get in, they're still, and they're locked in. So those three, the standing yoga, sometimes they'll do it with their bat. So they'll be on deck and it's one they can do with the bat. It works so quickly. And I just challenge you to try it because it really does work. I know it's a little bit out there, but it does work in training this. And as they get more advanced, you can take them to the table pose and then you can take them to the standing bow pose. And those again are for the more elite athlete, but you'll get results just from this one leg standing pose. And then love of the game. Where are we at with time? So we got some time. So in love with the game. When I got back into coaching, one of the things that I started hearing from my players was, oh, I stopped playing, or I really kind of fell out of the love of the game because of this coach. How many of you have heard that? So-and-so stopped playing, they didn't love the coach made it miserable, they didn't love it. And I kept hearing that. And I was like, well, I don't want to ever be that coach that people say that they didn't love it or this or that. And so I just got to thinking, like, well, what can I do to battle that comment? Because I don't want to say, well, poor you, because most likely that athlete just has a perspective and it wasn't true. Somebody just was hard on them or pushed them, or they experienced failure that had nothing to do with the coach. It's just that they experienced failure and they didn't like it. So I got to ask him, I'm like, well, do you love the game? Because you just told me you don't love the game anymore. And I know this, the things that I love, usually it takes a lot for me not to love them or learn to even dislike them. But what I know about love is it doesn't work like that. Because what I know about love is this: if I love something, I'm going to protect it. So I always challenge my athletes to say, if you say you love the game, then you're going to love it when it's good to you, and you're going to love it when it's unkind to you. So let's work through that. So I usually say, tell me what you love about the game, what don't you like about the game, and tell me if it's a coach they're wanting to talk about, or a situation or circumstances. We talk about those things, and then I empower them by telling them that this is how you're going to go about protecting that. You're not starting? Well, then we're going to work on how you can be prepared to start. So when you're in the dugout, you're going to show that you're ready, being ready. Because if you love the game, you're going to love it when you're not starting, and that means you're going to be ready. What things can you do to be ready? Understand your role. If your coach says you're going to be a base runner, ask for who. Which players in the lineup can I be a base runner for? Okay? Or if it's a pinch hitter, which hitters do you think I might be pinch hitting for? The coaches, as coaches, we know some of those, right? You can give at least 2 or 3 examples that, hey, you might go in for her, right? So you can educate your athlete by at least giving them that tidbit of knowledge. But then it's up to the athlete to be ready, right? Because if they love the game, they're going to remain ready. And that means you're going to have a bat in your hand. That means you're going to swing. Not just go run laps. Maybe if you're a pinch running, yes, that might be a thing. But you're going to make sure that you stay ready. Because if you love the game, you're going to be ready. And it doesn't matter if you're running once a game or if you're going to go in running and you conclude the game. So we just talked about the little athlete from Auburn, Padani. So she pinch ran she remained ready a couple years ago at the World Series when they were getting ready to go to Game 3. She was crucial. She got put in as a pinch runner from third base, and she ended up being the winning run and put him into Game 3. You go back to the Boston Red Sox when they broke the curse and they had Dave Roberts had stole second base, right? He went in to pinch run and he ended up scoring the run to help push him into the next game. Okay? So if you can relate stories like that to your athletes that are really struggling because of circumstances that challenge their love for the game, remind them how significant certain roles can be. Because if you love this game, you're going to love it whether you're playing the game to the max or you have a minimal role. Everything is going to be impactful. You're going to love it when it's good to you, and you're going to love it when it's unkind to you. Just like when I go back to that the situation where I hit for the cycle and then I struck out 4 times. Having that understanding, it would be easy to walk away and like, oh, Dad, I struck out 4 times today. It was so embarrassing. It was miserable. I'm not a good hitter. Da, 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 da. Thank God I had people in my life that did never let me be that kind of player and taught me how to have a good perspective on things. Because the strikeouts are going to happen, and I got to just throw them in the garbage and really talk about the rarity of what I had just accomplished. I love talking shop with other ball players and listening to their stories and what they've achieved or those moments of that when. And not always is it the stuff that happens on the field. Sometimes it's the thing when you're off the field. The secret to home runs. This is one of my favorites because, again, this is a story that is personal to me. So when I first started this game, I started out in baseball. And I was a Navy brat. And I was living in Utah at the time. And at that time, you had to be a member of the church to participate in some, like Brownies or Girl Scouts. And we weren't a member of the church. So my dad they didn't have girls softball at that time, so he put me in Little League Baseball, and that's where I got my start. And we had moved from Utah to Southern California where my grandparents lived and continued playing Little League, even though they had girls softball, continued playing Little League. And at that time, that was probably the first time I've ever experienced failure in the game. Because I remember I couldn't hit. I couldn't hit at all. And even though I was 8 years old, I wanted to hit. It was the one thing I liked to do, but I wasn't hitting. And I remember my grandma came to my game, and it was the only time she ever came to my game. And I remember sitting. She was a cook. My grandma was a cook. You got to understand, she could cook. And she was sitting in the stands, and she knew how much it meant to me to get a hit. Because I had just moved. I didn't know anybody. I was trying to play a game I really enjoyed. And she's yelling from the stands, "Come on, team baby. If you get a hit, I'll bake you a banana cream pie." That's all it took. That's all it took was banana cream pie. And if you play this game, you know it's rooted in superstition, right? Superstition. It doesn't matter whether you wear the same underwear for the entire season or the same socks or you eat a specific meal or whatever. I cannot tell you how many times I snuck banana cream pie into my college hotel room on our away trip, but it didn't matter because as long as it always led to a home run, either during the series or during that that event. And it was amazing how something as simple as banana cream pie worked. Now, if you were to ask Crystal Bustos, she's going to tell you it's apple pie. I'm not arguing with Crystal Bustos. If apple works for her, that's great, because she is the queen of home runs. She can hit. I remember she hit one over my head, and I think I ran as far as I could. That was it. It beat me. Whether I was running or whether it was the distance, she still beat me. And I'm sure it had nothing to do with apple pie. But anyways, superstition. Get on the level with your athletes. Sometimes it's just, hey, this is how it works. So I shared that story with my team, one of my collegiate teams. I was trying to find something that where I wasn't going to overcoach the situation. Something kind of silly. So I shared the story of how banana cream pie became the secret to home run. And I remember I went and I bought banana cream pies and I just put them in the locker room. And I told them the story. And I took the pies down to the field. They sat in the dugout and I had spoons, and the girls would just come over, dig into them, and eat during practice, which is not something we always do, but food and fellowship. It worked. That practice, I remember it was really cold, which probably contributed to the results as well, because we know how a ball can really fly in cold weather, right? But I wasn't going to tell them this, because all I needed, again, was them to believe. And if it was the belief in banana cream pie, that was going to work. So that practice, I also brought out the old bats, the Mizuno bats, and they hated these bats. Well, this is the thing. It's funny how many times they're like, oh, the Mizuno bats are awful. The Mizuno bats are this, the Mizuno bats are that. And I'm like, you ladies I didn't want to tell them this, but I'm sitting here thinking, well, the Japanese are second in the world in softball, and they hit pretty well, and they use Mizuno bats, Why are we going to dog on those bats? They're pretty good. But I told them that the reason why we were going to use them is because it was cold and I didn't want to break their new bats. So we broke out the bats and we broke out the banana cream pie. And in just that practice, they hit 80 home runs. 80 home runs in that practice. And again, it was just front toss, but still in that moment, the stars lined up and they believed. And maybe not all of that translated to the game for every single player, but it did for a couple. And that's all I needed, was a little bit of that belief in something, and as silly as it may be, to transfer. We took that mountain, we made it a molehill. And they didn't even know all the other details of why maybe we had such a great practice, because It's unnecessary sometimes, right? We just want to keep it simple, and we want to keep it kind of yummy. So banana cream pie was certainly something that worked for us. And then lastly, and I know we're coming to an end here, I have this down as MLB, Major League Baseball. So the last coach, which is actually one of my very first coaches as well, is a gentleman by the name of Butch Smith. He was my baseball coach in high school. So when I was playing Little League in Southern California, I had to eventually make the decision to transfer over to women's fast pitch, which I absolutely loved the game of fast pitch. I played it to the highest of levels and got my full education through playing. And little did I know that the winter baseball that I played in preparation for high school softball would come full circle. So Butch Smith was my baseball coach. I played on a very good baseball team in Vista High in Southern California. We had several kids that were drafted and played for some of the top colleges in the nation. And actually one of the athletes that I had trained with through my coach also owned a little academy. It's like one of the first to come about during that time. He also trained, Dave Roberts was also one of was my teammate, my high school teammate at that time. So I'll give you an idea of the caliber of ball that I played. So I share this because it's come full circle. Earlier this summer and Major League Baseball called me to come and basically train and interview as being one of the coaches or scouts coming in as women coming into the game. I have no idea where that's going to go, but this is what I want to tell you. I've been in touch with my high school coach for the last year. Again, we've always communicated, but more so since this has come about. And this is the thing that I remember about him, and he continues today. So we want to make sure that we tell we connect with our athletes, and how do we get around these mountains? It's on the shoulders of us coaches. It's not always on the shoulders of at this level, at the youngest levels, it's on our shoulders. After we've empowered them and taught them and given them all the resources, it is up to them. But the one thing I know about Coach Smith is this. He always says, I'm proud of you. He always tells me that I'm special. And he always tells me that he loves me. Okay? And that is so big for you to be able to connect with your athletes and be able to, again, let them know that they are someone. I cannot tell you how many young athletes that this stuff here, these mountains in their life, when they face real life, they hadn't learned how to deal with it because they didn't have coaches that really, truly, genuinely taught them how to face that mountain. The mountain in front of them, there was more than one way to deal with it. And just to give you an idea, and this might be a little more serious, and this may not always be exactly what we talk about, the mountains that we deal with, but when I first got back into college coaching, I went to Lemoyne College. My first team was an amazing team. We went to the World Series that year. We broke records. It was amazing. The girls were tough. But you know what I dealt with? Girls that cut themselves, girls that had eating disorders, girls that attempted suicide, girls that faced rape, girls that faced brutality, okay? I was amazed at how tough they were. I never dealt with that stuff when I was a ball player. But what I also realized is they had skills that they had learned from their coaching staff, that they had learned from the ball game, that they could face and deal with those things, the real life, the unkind stuff in life. I never knew that those were going to be things as a coach that I would ever have to face or have to coach through. But that was the reality of coaching today. So the mountains might be a little bit more than just a strikeout or a slump or an error in a crucial game. Those mountains might be more significant. So I'm challenging you again to be more than a coach. Teach them the things, give them the resources that they mentally can then take into the ball field, but then later on take into life. I also use humor. Humor is a big thing for me. I couldn't put everything on here, because if I told you all my stories, then we'd be here a long time. This is my time with the British team. Up there in the left-hand corner, that's the embrace of victory. Those girls were the underdogs. They were a good team, but the one thing that they struggled the most with was belief. That's my catcher. She's one of the oldest girls on the team. She's been with Team GB for 12 years. And it was one of the biggest victories that she had ever experienced. And we had completely overhauled our pitching staff because we wanted to teach them what it was like to believe in each other, and that they had a coach that could believe in them. And I'll talk a little bit more about the battery in my next session. And the picture on the bottom left, that's us winning the bronze medal. Could you imagine what it's going to look like when we win the gold medal? This team has been amazing, but again, for all those women, that was one of the biggest victories that they had achieved as a team. And it came through overhauling their belief system. And we used several of these techniques, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in the pitching session as well, some of the techniques that we used to start, because I coach the battery, teach the pitcher and the catcher how to work. It was an amazing journey. We finished 11th in the world. We've dropped 3 one-run ball games to China, Taipei, and the Italians. But we know we learned from all of that we're gonna beat them the next time we see them. We learned a lot from that. And then those are my boys. My tallest there one, he's actually my youngest. He's a football player. They're my story. They're the reason why I do what I do. This is what I enjoy most. I love what I do. I love being able to take the game, empower our girls, empower our coaches to where you guys can show them there's more ways around the mountains than one. I appreciate your time. If there's any questions, I would love to chat. And I can show you those other yoga poses if you would like. Any questions? Yes?
How long have you been coaching the British team?
I just finished my 2nd year. We have a training camp next month in January. It's going to be one of the first stateside trainings. We'll be down in Plant City. And we're scheduled to play in the Czech Republic, and then the WBSC is still waiting to determine where we could be for our qualification tournament. We may actually be in Africa. This summer, I went from the UK to Italy to Japan and back, and was here a couple weeks and then left for Amsterdam and came back. My kids totaled the car while I was in Amsterdam. I guess that's raising boys. I've kind of had to just say, Lord, they're yours. You know, just take them, just keep them safe. So yeah, I've been with them for about 2 years. But it seems like it's been longer because we have great chemistry. The one thing I like about being with the British is they put a lot of time into rehabbing the athletes. I say rehab, but it might just be, they do a lot of acupuncture, massage, stretching. They do everything here that a lot of our athletes are like, oh, if I go get that done, everybody's going to think I have an injury. But they don't have that same perspective. So I think you see a lot more longevity, and that's why a lot of times you see a lot more adult recreation, because they actually take care of their bodies a lot better. So they put as much time into it as they do training. It's kind of nice because as a coach, after throwing 500 pitches for BP, I can go in and get some dry needling in my arm and feel 100% the next day. Any other questions? Was this helpful? Well, if at any other time you have questions, just catch me in the hallway or anything. Thank you for coming.